Kristen, and you're listening to Podcast and Amplify, a podcast for women entrepreneurs who want to amplify their voice and brand through podcasting and grow a wildly successful business. I'm the executive producer and host of 2 shows and an entrepreneur, and I love helping women grow their visibility, mindset, and business to the next level. Each week, I share tips on how to launch and leverage your podcast, and I'm bringing on the very best business leaders to give you advice on how to build your business empire. Let's amplify your voice and business. Hey there, welcome back to the show. So this is the last week of our Latinx Heritage interview series, where we've been highlighting some freaking fabulous Latinas and their stories and their perspectives. And I hope you've enjoyed them as much as I have. If you missed any, make sure you go back and listen to them. You can binge them at this point. They were really great conversations. And I was so honored to have these women on the show. We also had some great Latinx and women of color owned businesses sponsoring this monthly series. And I was so happy to have them as partners to help support the show and to share with you all the fabulous promo codes and discounts that they created for you all. And I hope that you've been able to take advantage of some of the offers and work with this really great group of business owners that I completely trust, and I love every single one of them. So on this episode, we're going to be shifting gears a little bit. We're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics, thought leadership, and how you can position yourself with a podcast to become a true leading voice in your industry, in your niche, and then leverage that to get on bigger stages, call in bigger opportunities. So I love helping clients to define what their thought leadership is, what their unique voice and message is. And I wanted to go into a little bit about what that is for some of you who may not know. I know that I've heard of the term thought leader in my corporate job, but I know that it's used outside of corporate. There might be some of you who are like, what is a thought leader? It sounds cool. And how do I become one? So there are a couple of definitions that I really like. For example, a thought leader clearly communicates challenging new ideas. They back those ideas up with data. They have a strong point of view. They're not afraid to talk about controversial opinions or topics. A thought leader is going to have a positive reputation. They're going to be someone who's likable, who feels like they're trustworthy. And one of the definitions that I really loved is someone who empowers others through their vast knowledge and insight. And some definitions talk about thought leaders as being able to see like what's going to happen in the future. They're on the pulse of, what's going on, where things are going, sort of that being able to predict what's going to go on in the future. But what I like to define it as in terms of the future is people who are actually wanting to enact change. They are part of creating a new future because of their new way of thinking, their new approach. So for me, a thought leader is really anyone who has an area of expertise. They're trusted. They want to empower others through their knowledge and their insights. And they're someone who wants to change up the status quo. There are things that they're seeing that they don't like, and they're coming up with different ideas, different ways of being in the world, different ways of operating their businesses. They're creating things that they want to see, but they're not seeing. So if that feels familiar to you, if it feels like, hey, I feel like I have something important to say, and I know that what I have to say could really change my industry. It could change how people think. Maybe it can even change the world. And you're feeling called to share this message on a podcast, maybe on bigger stages. I really believe that podcasting is one of the best ways to develop your thought leadership. And I want to talk about why and a little bit about how my journey has definitely included podcasting in terms of honing my voice and getting on bigger stages. So we talked about what thought leadership is, but before we dive into where podcasting fits into this whole thing, I want to talk about what's the importance behind becoming a thought leader. How can it benefit your business? How can it benefit your community? And so when you become a thought leader, you are someone who can inspire change, help other people see the world differently, see things differently. And that's really important, especially now when there are so many things that I think as a society we are rethinking. And to be a part of that change is really important. Being a thought leader also helps build your brand. That helps people trust you because they know that you are someone who has ideas that are innovative, that you're looking to solve for impact. You know, that your solutions are around, I want to create meaningful changes and impact for the people in my community. And being a thought leader helps position you as someone who is leading those efforts, who's thinking about things in a different way. And that just adds so much value to your brand. And as you develop your ideas, your unique solutions, that's where you're also developing your credibility. And that's what's going to get you speaking invites. It's going to get people noticing you for what is uniquely you, for what only you have to offer. And that's what's going to get people to want to book you on their podcasts for interviews or at their conferences or their trainings or for even media opportunities. So that credibility that comes from being a thought leader gives you a lot of opportunities to share your message on bigger stages and grow your brand and actually create the change that you want to see in the world. So how can you position yourself with a podcast? So a podcast is excellent for building thought leadership because this is a platform where you get to start to really hone your voice and your message. You get to create shows, solo episodes, sharing all the different facets of what you know, your insights, and also yourself, which is always going to be sort of your differentiator because no one sees the world the way that you do. No one has the blend of experiences and perspectives that you have and are able to bring to whatever topic it is that you are passionate about sharing and knowledgeable about sharing. So a podcast will help you get that practice of sharing your message in a different way, over the course of a season of a podcast or years of a podcast. And you really get to start to hone that message and figure out what it is that you want to talk about. I know that was very much the case for me after having a podcast for, I think it was almost a full year. I really started to hone in on what I loved to talk about, and that was building community through podcasting, empowering others through podcasting, uplifting different voices on a podcast, and helping people feel seen through podcasting, through sharing your stories. And that's really what I love to talk about. And I created signature talks around and started sharing that on other people's podcasts and then eventually at conferences and retreats, and also being a guest on other people's podcasts. Their interviews aren't live, but you do have to deliver your talking points as though they are live because you want to sound professional. You want to sound like you know what you're talking about. So podcasting is really great for that practice, building confidence. Having a podcast is also great for building authority. So when you have your solo episodes where you talk about, for me, it's podcasting, that's where people learn from you and they learn what you know about your topic. They start to trust that you know what you're talking about. And that gives you that sense of, oh, this person is in the know, they're sharing their ideas, they're thinking about things. So great for authority building. And then having a podcast and all of these episodes that you've recorded is really great, especially when you're first starting out, to build evidence that you are someone who can talk about your ideas, your knowledge, and that you're committed to doing that. So if you have a whole bank of, 50 episodes, that shows that you not only have thought about your topic a lot, you've talked about it a lot. So if your goal is to speak on bigger and bigger stages, being seen as a thought leader is going to help get you on those stages, but you don't always have the speaking experiences to talk on that bigger podcast or talk on that bigger stage. And so being able to create your own bank of evidence of episodes that highlight that you're capable is a great way, especially when starting out. So one of the questions I get a lot around thought leadership is, how do I know what I'm a thought leader in? Like, how do I define that message? And I have so many stories that I could share that are part of my journey. I have so much experience, but I don't really know how to put all of it together to position myself as someone who should be on those stages, should be interviewed on whatever media outlet you want, get the PR exposure. So I'll share with you a little bit about my approach to helping my clients define what their thought leadership is. So every single one of us who started a business, we help people in a unique way, and we are thought leaders. And so it's really just a matter of owning it and showcasing it in a way that others can see it too. So thought leadership is really at the intersection of what you're passionate about, what you're knowledgeable about, what your unique solution is to a problem. And then really it's adding in that layer of like, what makes you you? And so this is what I used to do at my corporate job is I would work with the executives in my firm and I would help identify who do we think is a thought leader and who would be a great person to start positioning in that way. I would coach them and find out, what it was that they were really passionate about, because that is so important. If you're not really lit up by what you're talking about, it doesn't matter how expert you are for the most part. If you want to become a public speaker, an engaging and a dynamic public speaker, or representative for your firm in this case. And so that was always the first place that I started. And then I would ask about, what are your qualifications? What experience do you have? What projects have you worked on? What credentials do you have to sort of back that up? And then we would talk about any sort of unique perspectives they had. And then it was a matter of creating the content and a strategy for sharing that content through all of our platforms. And so it's essentially the work that I do with my VIP clients, except I'm working with one entrepreneur and we're working on creating one medium, but it's all around how do we leverage this medium, this podcast, for maximum output and to really highlight your voice in a way that shares your meaningful message with your community. It shows people who you are, how you're there to impact their lives. And it's something that then you can use to launch your public speaking career or being in, media outlets or getting a book deal. And it also helps with your sales, getting leads, and then collaboration. So it's all about creating this really powerful piece of content, which I always talk about, how we have to leverage what we're working on and make the most out of it. A lot of times that looks like content repurposing, but in this case, when you add that extra layer of thought leadership, it's actually helping to build your brand, grow your visibility in a really empowering way for you and an impactful way for audiences. So that's a little bit about thought leadership, why I think it's so important to include in your podcast if you're an entrepreneur and you're looking to grow your brand and speak on bigger stages. And so this is exactly what I did with my podcast. So not only do I have the experience of working with directors and executives in my corporate career, and it's been a really fun extension of that role, bringing that into my business and how I help my clients, but I've been through this process. So using a podcast to speak on a national stage, to become a public speaker, is exactly what I did. I used my podcast to build my credibility, to get comfortable, to hone in my message. And then I was able to speak at a national conference about podcasting. So I was able to leverage my podcast and all of that experience into a national speaking opportunity, my first paid speaking opportunity at a retreat. And so I didn't do the traditional route of, oh, you have to speak on stages for a year, or you have to attend that conference first before you can pitch. These are things that I was told, and I didn't do it that way. I decided to really leverage the platform that I had to create the outcome that I wanted. And so that's why I'm so passionate about helping my clients to do the same and really use this powerful tool. And I wanted to share a little bit about how I'm incorporating that into my offers and how you can work with me if becoming a speaker and increasing your visibility and your brand awareness is on your 2023 goals. This is a great time to start your podcast and start getting that going. And if you want support in that, I am here to help you define what your thought leadership is, infuse that into your podcast, and create a podcast that's really, really working for you. It's going to work for you not only in the content creation department, it's also going to help expand your brand as a whole. So if you're interested in working in this way, I have VIP days available now through the end of the year, and it's so much fun. It's so much fun tapping into all of your unique gifts, what makes you that really stand out leading voice. And if you have been thinking, oh, I have all these pieces and I don't know how to put them together, I don't know what things to highlight, I need someone to connect the dots for me because I'm just too close to my own story. That's what we do inside of the podcast VIP intensive. If that interests you, hit me up in the DMs. I'd be more than happy to talk with you about it. And that's all I have for you today. So thanks again for listening to this episode. See you next time. Thanks for listening to this episode of Podcast and Amplify. If you love the show, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And the best way to support this show is by sharing, rating, and reviewing the podcast. For those of you who leave a review, you'll get the chance to win a 30-minute strategy session or a mini audit of your existing podcast. Thanks for listening, and remember, your voice and what you have to offer is needed in the world. Until next week, take care.